welcome to the fifth webinar in the series of webinars organized by the Higher School of Economics Graduate School of Business. Our topic of discussion today is strategies of business development in digital economy. And we will be discussing this topic with Dmitry Knatko, who is Deputy Dean of the Graduate School of Business. Hello, Dmitry.
Hello.
And Maria Yelagina, who is a master's student in International Management Program. Hello to you, Maria.
Hi.
Well, we also would like to invite our dear audience to take part in our discussion, in our conversation. Do let us know what countries you're joining us from today and share your stories of digital transformation with us, what your companies are doing, what you personally are doing, and let us know about what you think about the subject of this conversation, of our discussion today. Well, certainly we live in interesting times, to say the very least, and the changes that have engulfed us and swept through our lives are quite transformational. Some people are doing better than others. Some companies are doing better than others. But what's certain that digital reforms, digital transformation is probably here to stay. And according to Boston Consulting Group, 80% of the companies, actually more than 80% of the companies, have considered accelerating their digital transformation as part of their strategy. So today, I'd like to begin by defining what digital transformation means to companies and people. So Dmitry, let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, this year, 2020, brought us to a state that we felt, the majority of us felt very separated, very isolated. The decisions that had to be taken that brought us home and that made us staying primarily online has definitely raised a very serious bar in this feeling of being in a small cells of your own personal containment space of your flat. And the same actually happened in business. And many companies felt isolated in how they were trying to tackle with the problem of having to be online. And in many ways, it became a certain separation, a certain breakpoint for a number of companies, because a number of digital leaders, a number of companies who already have been forcing and trying to be active in the field of online trading, online interactions with the customer, building online experience, they actually were the ones who had less handicap, who were advancing as fast as possible. So for them, basically what happened is the COVID-19 became a certain catalyst for growth. And we are using Zoom, right? Did you hear about Zoom at least a year ago? Yes, some people used it because it was convenient, but definitely not at the scale that we have. And the same goes for many other services. But for the rest of the companies, it became a certain challenge, because what happened, for example, for us, Higher School of Economics has always been a very active player on the market of online education and introduction of online technology, its core business. But definitely, we, as everyone else all around the world, we had to transfer to full online in less than a week, and that was a hell of a struggle. So the
Sure.
majority.
Certainly, as you have just mentioned, some companies are thriving, some companies are struggling, and we as people have taken on board so many different things that we sort of heard about before, but didn't actually really actively use before. Zoom, for example, is one of them. But let's talk about these changes. As you rightly put it, some companies adjusted really quickly. Why did they adjust very quickly? Were they equipped with these skills? Was their strategy sort of adaptable to change? Or what was behind their success? Because some companies very quickly adjusted to the new normal, as we call it, and some companies are still struggling. Is there something with their strategy, the way they're built, their structure? Maybe it's time for some companies to rethink their competitive advantage.
Yeah, a lot of input for today's meeting is actually coming from a session of webinars that we held in August, when we invited a number of people who were leading digital transformation in a number of companies, both large and small, and working in different industries, and asking them the same question, like, what helped you? What did you see during these COVID-19 months? How did you tackle with digitalization? And basically, majority of stories of success, the one that you mentioned here, those who basically made a adaptable move in a very small period of time. They didn't have to make an actual pivot. So these were the companies who were already living with a large part of online in their core business, because these were the story of companies who are working in logistics, the companies like Yandex Delivery in Russia, like Uber, an online platform for logistics, who already were thinking about an advancement of their business model, because they had a serious negative impact on their transportation due to the fact that people had to stay home. But since they were already thinking on what could happen next, how they could grow further, they had an opportunity to make a pivot to things like Uber Eats, right? So to other kind of services that are introduced. Online education, and I'm not talking about the traditional universities like Higher School of Economics, because it was pretty much a very big deal for us in terms of challenging all the business processes that we have. But for those companies that were basically driven by online, think Coursera, right? One of the companies that basically became the foundation of our ecosystem of using MOOCs, massive online courses in our programs. Think Microsoft services like Microsoft Teams, a big helper that basically helped the whole industry, education industry, many countries to use it. So those who saw it coming in many ways, we were trying to force this digitalization. They were the ones who benefited most.
In other words, they were pioneers of the digital transformation before this whole big, step into the new normal happened. So it's certainly very curious and incredible in the sense that some companies could foresee the change. Some companies could foresee this, or maybe they just simply thought, all right, this is where we are going to work. This is our new field, and they didn't worry about some how shall I put it, new threats, talking about the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then something like COVID-19 happened, which transformed our lives in so many ways. And these companies happen to be afloat and actually driving the business, setting new trends. So that's certainly amazing and something definitely to learn from. So sometimes you have to be ahead of the change, in order to stay afloat. Well, as you mentioned, education and how schools are coping, universities and students and the learning processes and what universities are doing to adjust to these changes. Let's switch to Maria here because she's a master's student and she's the one who is affected by all these changes because, look, students go to universities to study, to socialize with professors, with their fellow classmates, to build new skills and new ties and network, because what they learn right now is something that's going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. I mean, the human connection, the people they're going to become friends with. Maria, what are your thoughts on this digital change and the transformation in your life?
Yes, thank you very much for this thought-provoking question. I agree that it is a difficult time in which we live right now. And as you see right now, I'm sitting in the comfort of my room. I changed a jacket to my sweater, and so I'm feeling quite well, actually. However, yes, I'm very sad about certain opportunities that maybe I have lacked due to this COVID-19 pandemic and turning into this new age of total digitalization and total business transformation. And of course, I have my certain thoughts and concerns about my future. I mean, what my future will be like. That is why I want to ask our experts, what do you think, how are the agile technologies, maybe how the new business platforms will change, for instance, in my life in the future?
Well, certainly. There's so many questions to think about. So much food for thought.
Well, the thing about platform is that unlike the traditional form of doing business, it's representing a certain ecosystem. It's at the same time can work as as a problematic field, because if you have been disconnected with one of the kind of participant, and the whole of your platform depends on that, then you may suffer consequences. But since the big companies that became leaders and certain like beacons for new kind of doing businesses, they're actually innovating a lot and just following certain best practices that we see in business in companies like Amazon, Netflix. So the companies that were thinking long enough for a certain combination of different kinds of products, of different kind of relationship with suppliers, and the role of these relationships. So for them, the situation became a test for what would be the configuration of the portfolio, what would be the possibility of expanding the portfolio. In many ways, the companies that understand now the value of working, for example, in ecosystems, right? You remember where do you live, Maria? In Moscow, in St. Petersburg, another city of
I
Russia?
live in Moscow currently.
Okay, so you live in Moscow, right? So in Moscow and in many large cities, one of the industries that suffered most were basically the hotel, restaurants, and cafes. So all of the participants of the hospitality industry, and it's understandable why, right? So the customers are gone, the streets are empty, and if you remember this peak in isolation that happened in Moscow, it was pretty scary, right? It's like zombie apocalypse. It's nobody out there. And for them, it usually was a kind of like a small business, medium-sized business, right? This, depending on the amount of customers, it's just the source of their basic survival, right? And so what happened was that thanks to the possibilities of ecosystems of platforms that existed in a number of platforms, like in Russia, a certain competitor, or actually replacement for Uber Eats, would be the Yandex Eats, and it serves the same purpose, right? You can order food from different kind of cafes and restaurants. So due to the fact that they could be participants of this, platform for ordering food, they could still be a part of logistics. They could still consider their, touch their customers, work with their customers. So what happened basically was that the whole industry was trying to reinvent what could be done in this situation. So what some of the cafes did, they were actually trying to help each other, even for those who were not part of, of larger, amount of customers, and they were trying to still get the part of their share, or they had some people who lacked work, like waiters, right? So they didn't have a possibility to serve food. So what they did, they were trying to collaborate together, and one of the cafes could have been working as a production place for other cafes. And this was all done through the interaction on the basis of the platform. So basically what we saw was that sustainability of the business was driven by the possibility of the platform. And in many ways...
So in other words, technology helped to adjust to these changes and to this new reality. But, some companies have done better than others. And some restaurants, for example, that cater to, say, for example, haute cuisine, or, have a not sort of a mass market line, the restaurants and cafes that are a bit different, or concept restaurants, concept cafes and stores, we're having a difficult time. We're having a hard time because they had to readjust as
readjust
as well. Yeah.
By the way, actually this was a catalyst for new kinds of cafes. Just a month ago, I have met a person who was responsible for opening of the restaurant in St. Petersburg. And this is a purely online project which is focused on haute couture food. So this is basically the high-class restaurant which doesn't have any kind of investment in surrounding, in environment, but they're just delivering the food online.
Okay, so that's certainly a way to survive, to deliver online, to switch to the online format. But nonetheless, when we go to a restaurant, it's the social factor. It's just, getting ready to go to a restaurant is already something, the atmosphere, people around you, you dress up. As Marie earlier said, I'm sitting here in my apartment in the comfort of my home, wearing a sweater instead of a jacket. Yeah. So we right now we live and work from home, but in a different in the old normal it was different. So we the social factor played a larger role in our lives. So do you think that the digital will replace what we were so used to before? We had to adjust to the new reality. Maria, what do you think as a person who is, the representative of a younger generation, somebody who is probably coping with so many different things right now and trying to reassess what's going on? Or are you happy with the change?
Currently, right now, I may be not 100% happy because I really miss the social interaction with people to whom I always visit at my university, with professors, and I miss going to work and not just sitting in front of my computer and making certain projects or work that is sent to me. So I guess that's the most thing that I miss is the fact that I need to wake up at 7 a.m. and to put on makeup and go out and know that I will meet certain people that I would actually experience unforgettable moments of my life. And now I wake up at 9 and I have an opportunity to just sit with a cup of coffee and in front of Zoom and have a class. So, and this maybe I will not, for instance, remember it in a year or two, and because certain social interactions are very memorable, and afterwards we will undoubtedly come back to them. So yes,
Okay, hopefully so. Yeah, I'm also keeping my fingers crossed that we will go back to the old reality because I personally miss the social factor. That is very important for me. And as you rightly put it, I think these are the things that are memorable, that stay in our minds and memory for the years to come. But sitting in front of your computer screen, you just do your work, get things done, which is important. But nonetheless, there's this emotional factor that's missing, or it's just different. It has also been transformed in some ways. Dimitri, speaking of the companies and change, of course, this new reality requires discipline. Yeah, we all have to be disciplined. Now we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to waste our time to get from point A to point B. We operate from home. And that, in a sense, has made us more efficient than before. But what about companies? Speaking of discipline, we have to be disciplined. We have to readjust our strategy. We have to rethink so many processes. Can we say that the reality that we are now, it's kind of like the end of business as usual? So we have to be like really flexible. There's no such thing as stability anymore. So we just have to be flexible and constantly adjusting to change.
If 2020 have taught us anything, right, then it would be that it's really hard for us in 2000s, in 2020s at least, to hold on to something that is rigid. We have to make ourselves learn how to become much more flexible, much more dynamic. The same goes for businesses. The companies, well, basically, even if we were talking about digitalization, right, or strategies for digital transformation of companies, one of the key questions that would start our conversation would be, how do you understand the digital representation of the value that you create? Like, what would be the effect of digital economy, of digital business on what you do? Like, how is it connected? And in many ways, the way how businesses were reacting to that was a little bit synthetic, a little bit artificial, not connected to the actual experience, because of a certain, psychological barrier that we had. Because it was comfortable to think of the world like this is the way how we live, it's going to be like that. And now we lost that, in business area, in strategies. We know of a term which is called XO, exponential organization. the idea of companies that grow in a really fast way, in a totally different kind of manner, which is not connected to a certain linear history-dependent actions. This is a story of learning, of a learning curve, which is coming so fast up that you're creating the business that is not, something that was valuable like $1 billion last year and $2 billion next year. It's actually something that was worth 500,000 last year and 15 billion next year and 1 trillion in 5 years, this kind of stuff. So in this kind of events, even business decision makers, they're really reshaping their own understanding of what needs to be done for at least 3-5 years, last 5 years, because the digitalization story, it's been on the main pages of discussion for businesses of what's going to happen next, strategic management. The idea of using things like the futurist approach, the using the futurist approach in strategic planning, where nothing is specific, nothing is set.
What is futuristic approach? What is it? The futurist, there are people whose profession, it's a modern profession, a futurist, somebody who forecasts the future, but can we really forecast the future?
It's about the guys who are not trying to forecast it like consulting companies are trying to do, because they always fail in their delivery of what's going to happen. But those who are talking about what's going to happen when we will introduce Neuralink to our hats and what's going to happen when we're going to live on Mars, this kind of futurists.
Okay.
This VUCA world that we live in, it's so, changing the way how we see everything. That is really demanding from us to stop holding on to 2019, because in many ways what 2020 did, even though we all wait for it to end, that there would be no coming back to a ground point, to the 0 point. Something had moved on. So the same with businesses, it's reconsidering the value that we create. What is the nature of that value? What is the nature of the relationship with our customers? What is the future of the world that we live in? How we see that future. This is that kind of question. The TED discussions for visionaries who see the future play today a much important role than listening to the latest events that happen on the market, because sometimes the kind of ideas that are igniting the minds of many people, it's what bringing the largest companies today. We see the success of companies like SpaceX that Elon Musk is doing. So they're expanding the strategies that are really moving beyond what is accustomed to. This is the kind of,
that's absolutely, can't agree with you more. So judging by what you just said, it's important not to cling to the past and to try to separate ourselves from the past, no matter how painful it is, but look forward, move forward, and try to sort of have a vision of where you want to be, where you want your company to be. Speaking of that, let's talk about and compare how some of the Russian companies are doing in this new climate, and how are the foreign companies, international companies, doing? Can you give us examples of successful Russian companies who have adjusted to the new reality, and successful international companies? You've mentioned some of them already, but let's just compare and contrast.
Well, our IT-driven business is actually showing a lot of potential for international investors. And what's happening even today with Sberbank and Sber platform that was introduced, what's happening with Yandex initiatives that are actually integrating in the lives of many other people. Even the story of COVID, we were, all of us, Maria, did you at least checked once the condition of COVID in Moscow using Yandex platform? Did you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so right. So we use the services like that in our life, and it really moved the kind of penetration of this new kind of services and new kind of solutions for many people. And we have great stories, success stories for education platforms, online stories for how the education products are created for kids. We have a number of companies that can compete very seriously with the many international companies. What I like specifically about our internet-driven businesses is that They are trying to see the world on a large scale, not just limited to one national scale. You know, companies like Revolut, the fintech companies that are actually changing and reigniting the approach to financing solutions, and not just in Russia, on a large scale. You know, the same goes for just some time ago, I started interacting with a really interesting international-based startup that also includes a lot of people coming from Russia, both for technology and solutions, that is creating very advanced products for teaching kids through role-playing games, through the attempts of creating some sort of like a Netflix for educating kids. And the way how quickly it is done now, how quickly we're launching a product for a market, you know, it's not the story of how we were approaching launching a product like, say, 5 years ago. This is like, we decided, we created an MVP, we launched the product, bam, like just 3 weeks, and the whole product is already working with customers, with everything, with testimonials, and this is the way how it's done today. And of course, we are looking at many stories of success on the global scale. We see a lot of struggles that companies are facing now, like the story of Netflix, that even with many possibilities for new customers, with high level of retainment, they're facing new sort of, challenges for their businesses. So we have stories of success, we have stories of problems that we see in the future, but that's the very quick dynamic on the digital-driven markets on the global scale that we see. I mean,
well, certainly there are a lot of changes, and we just have to come to terms as on a personal level, on a business level. And you said the companies also have a mixed success there, because certainly they were strong in some departments, in some areas, and weaker in others. So they need to take on board these changes and kind of adjust to them, and reevaluate their strategy in many ways, and actually decide what's good for them, and what are they going to keep and what are they going to get rid of. A lot of thinking needs to be done there. But speaking of, I just want to go back to the education. You mentioned a very interesting thing: international projects, global projects that unite a lot of people. For example, even take our situation. We are in Moscow, and we're sitting at home right now in the comforts of our homes, talking to people. We're talking to the rest of the world. Anyone in the world can join us, and I'm sure a lot of people from other countries are joining us today, have joined us today to watch this webinar, to get to know what's happening in Moscow and how the Graduate School of Business is doing, the Higher School of Economics, what interesting projects are being launched here. You mentioned kids, kids that participate in different different platforms from different countries. We talked a bit about it today, and also previously when we were preparing for this conversation, you mentioned something very, very exciting: kids from Israel and the United States, Russia. So all of them are united on one platform, and they learn in digital reality. They learn a lot of things. They compete with each other. Tell us a bit more about this, because I'm sure a lot of parents are concerned right now about their younger children who cannot go to school, who cannot meet their peers, classmates, but they have to learn online, and that's a whole new set of skills there.
Actually, your question holds at least two sides of the story, both very relevant in terms of the problems and opportunities that arise with the digitalization of business. So one of the problems in the very question that you asked is actually the reflection of how a parent might consider of the experience that his kid may have when interacting with digital, right? And this is basically what we know as the fear of changes, the hugest problem with digitalization and with moving to digital strategies that many companies are facing. And let me just, for that, take you maybe back and just ask you in reverse. Is there something in current state that makes you fear, of what might happen next for the 2021? It's actually the question for both of you, for Marina and Maria. So is there something that you fear?
Yes, I fear that tomorrow will be total lockdown and I will not be able to. Yes, because it's an unpredictable time and it's certainly very complicated to live
Okay,
under these conditions.
Marina, and you?
Same here. Same here. What worries me is the uncertainty. Yeah, in some ways, I have adjusted to what the new reality has thrown my way, but I just think that something may happen that I may not be aware of, I may not be ready for. So, yeah, that kind of
Basically,
makes
both
me feel nervous.
both are coming from this common and pretty understandable fear of uncertainty. And in business sense, that's just coming back to the topic of our meeting. That's what making one of the top uh, core competences that are needed in the business right now is the skill of how to manage the change in the company, and also how to lead the change for people who are afraid of these changes. If you want to, I can expand on that a little bit later on, but that's just one of the very big stories. So that even the question, it just goes on with this fear of changes. But another side, this
Yeah.
thing that you asked with the kids, it's really
Mhm.
curious because what I saw when this whole story, we were creating an MVP of how to teach strategic leadership for kids who are living in different conditions, who are interacting only online, who even never see each other. You know that what was different? They were not afraid because for them it's something that is happening naturally. They were born into
Yes,
stage. And even if you remember yourself, you may have been, when you were a kid, your parent might have needed to move to some place or another, and everybody was stressing out. But remember the kids in reaction to that. For them, it's an adventure. So you, as a kid,
absolutely.
be stressed out. You need to take care of somebody. You have responsibility. You have to, do something. But for kids, as a representative of this new digital age, the experience is different. So that's why I think, in my mind, the education for kids and actually interacting with kids in the digital era, that's one of the most interesting stories that large businesses are trying to do and trying to work out.
Fascinating, fascinating indeed. Yes, you rightly put it. Saying that it's a whole new adventure for children. I just all of a sudden wanted to be a kid again. Certainly tough being an adult and having to tackle all these challenges and uncertainty. Well, speaking of uncertainty and speaking about our resilience, personal and professional, I just want to ask you one thing. And it's something that I've been really, really curious about in business schools, when you study subjects like management, I'm sure Maria would agree or have something to add to that. You look at companies, give a 360 analysis, do the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which we mentioned before earlier. But, I think that none of the business schools ever addressed the pandemic as a potential threat factor. Because look, when it all happened, a lot of companies were kind of helpless. A lot of managers that went to leading business schools of the world didn't have any solutions, didn't have any ideas as to what to do. Everybody panicked. So, will business schools learn something from this experience, from this situation? Will they teach management, strategic management, in a different way?
Yes, for sure. In my opinion, that the approach of teaching will definitely change because, as we see right now, education, for example, in Russia is already more transforming into being online rather than being offline. So I guess that's also what different platforms, educational platforms, will be developed in order for students to be better immersed in the educational environments. Maybe new techniques will be introduced for being so there would be like IT involvement between the professor and the students. Also, the mentality of people will change, and kids and the students will also be ready to teach in this kind of to learn in this kind of formats, and they will understand all the material better, and whereas not just sitting in class, and they will like maybe that. So yes, I think that's the method of teaching and overall, like speaking in the holistic approach that many business schools nowadays, not only in Russia but also, for example, Harvard Business School, which is like the leading educational establishment, and but it is very old, but nevertheless it's continues to transform itself. So I guess that it will touch any business school that exists today. Yeah, I think that people will also adjust to this.
Very interesting, Maria. Thank you for this. And Dmitry, what do you think, as somebody who's managing the business school, what lessons as an institution have been learned?
I'd say that there are at least three topics in your question. The first one is we have to be really human centric in this age of turmoil and this age of VUCA. Because what we basically have to understand that aside of talking about COVID-19 as a catalyst for changes, we have to understand that we face an actual threat, a threat that is, bringing possible harm to many people around, to our, in terms of schools. We're talking about students, and we have to take care of the health risks as a prior issue, and in this sense, even though you ask about, a business kind of perspective, like how you see that as a certain impediment for your, uh, management procedure. But basically for us, it's a huge question of taking care of the people who we interact with, because that's the basic human need, to take care of for thy neighbor, to care of the people who are close to you. And in many ways, I'd say that this became a very serious priority for many people. And in like wearing a mask, right? We have this posters in higher school of economics that doesn't say you have to wear a mask. No, it basically says take care of me, take care of you, like care of other people. We started thinking of caring of other people. That's one of important stories in terms of what we had to face, and start to rethink the experience of schools through the idea of what we can do to diminish this risk and to create a certain help for kids. This is now for example, at higher school of economics, this is the time when we came back to a full online, and we were trying to interact with many kind of platforms and formats. We're trying to create opportunities for students to come back here and to use the facilities of the university, maintaining the social distancing factor. But still, what we're trying to maintain, we're trying to take care of people. So that's the prior issue here. The second question is definitely what Maria said, that we're trying to innovate. Even the story with this educational platform for kids that I was referring to, what we're doing there, basically, we're trying to introduce the concepts of strategic leadership into role-playing game, like, like Dungeons and Dragons, fighting with the monsters to master the concepts of competition, of leadership, of team management. And actually, the kind of experience, the same goes for different kinds of schools. We're trying to innovate and we're trying to do something new. And the third part is definitely innovation. Just last week, I was participating in the national conference of EFMD association with a group of schools from all around the world, where people were sharing their part of the stories. And it's the same problem. What we saw was that we all share a lot of in common. This is actually something curious that COVID-19 did. In some ways, we became separated, but in understanding this personal side of the problem and caring of another, we became closer. And how people introduce technologies now to survive, to live on, even though the threat exists, is just mind-blowing. Like, for example, HALT International Management School. So what they did, they reshaped the whole educational process. They invested a lot of money into the rooms that are in the business school to make them sustainable in terms of both the risk of new epidemia and at the same of creating an opportunity to have hybrid education, so for those who are in the school and for those who are studying all around the world and they can't come because of, of the separation. So this kind of smaller innovation of using the microphones that are creating the kind of feeling, the microphone that are installed in the walls and in the room, so that anyone who is sitting in any part of the room, even maintaining social distance, will be heard and will be able to listen to those who are sitting in other parts of the world.
Yeah, in other words, what we are seeing here, we have limitless opportunities. As long as we keep our minds open, as long as we are willing to innovate, there are so many things that we can do. Yes. So that's a huge plus of this sort of negative situation, or not so positive situation. But it's important, as I previously said, it's one of my favorite expressions: when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Try to see the positive side of things. Yeah. So as you said, just going back to what you said and highlighting some of the very interesting and wise things that you said. Caring about each other is important. So that has been highlighted by this new situation, by this new sort of reality that we live in. That's important. Some people have displayed that. Some people have displayed the opposite, but we will not focus on them. But caring is important. Yes. Also, innovating. Yeah. It's important to think, constantly think of something new, something that we can bring into our lives, improve our situation, and of course, keeping an open mind about things. I think you said a very important thing here, that we are far apart geographically and we cannot travel as much as we did before. But for some reason, in some very special, curious way, an amazing and incredible way, we are closer to each other right now because we can connect with so many people from around the world. Um, in a sense, there are no borders. Yeah, there are no digital borders. We can approach each other, we can talk to each other, we can hold seminars, conferences. Everything is now online. And to be honest, I personally think there's a lot of intellectual exchange going on. And in many ways, I'm enjoying this situation. Maria, let's turn to you. Are you enjoying this kind of intellectual activity, although it's online and you cannot probably meet as much as you can with your friends and classmates? But what are your perceptions and feelings?
Yes, I think that my perception about the fact that I have more opportunities to learn, this is a fact, and I'm very right now immersed in different and in different domains of science, for instance, because right now I have more time in order, for example, to sit and learn at Coursera courses, which are also very interesting, and also that I'm having my online classes and I'm having professors who do not teach, for example, at Higher School of Economics, but from example, Vienna University, Columbia University, which is very exciting because we can actually exchange ideas, we can communicate with each other, we can afterwards write a message to the professors and ask some questions which actually concern us. So I guess yeah, that's yes, it is a very exciting time in which we live, and especially if you work in, for example, a multinational corporation which holds corporate social responsibility in front of its um, employees. They offer also different platforms and opportunities to learn new things while just sitting at home, just in front of the computer. The company gives you access to different and interesting activities and opportunities which one person can immerse to. So yes, I'm enjoying my talent despite the fact that less psychological and behavioristic domain is kind of not right now on the top of priority. But yes, it is very interesting right now, and I'm quite enjoying it.
That's great. That's absolutely amazing. And that's great that you're thriving. You have managed to adjust and discipline yourself and learn a lot of things that come your way. And you're taking advantage of all the digital opportunities that come into your life. That's great. Dmitry, what about you? How have you personally changed? What new skills have you learned on a personal basis? How have you changed as a person? Have you become maybe more disciplined? Or what about you?
You know, I think that 2020 served in many ways not just a year when we had to learn new hard skills, but basically a year when we all of us were put in a situation that we had to change our mindset,
Mm.
our emotional perception. And in this way, I'd say that 2020 have been a very big challenge for me. I've met a lot of people who opened me some new horizons, some I opened my eyes for some new understanding of the world around me, and some of the people changed my understanding of them. So this is the kind of the experience, like more spiritual, emotional in many ways, because of the kind of very big changes that we went through. But in my opinion, I'm starting to sort of go into that kind of stuff. That if you take away this fear that, oh my God, is it going to continue? Oh my God, when 2020 is going to end? If you just take away that stress from your life and just you let it go and you just say, okay, what's going to happen? Like is there something new that's going to happen, and can I innovate? Because actually, even last week when we had this kind of similar discussion of the fears and feelings of 2020 for the administration of EFMD schools from all around the world. Some of the people, what they wrote, aside of tiredness, stress, this kind of stuff that we all feel, even though we went through. But some of the people said innovative, interested. What's going to happen next? This kind of stuff. And in many ways, this necessity to feel energized, to feel optimistic about what's going to happen next, it's something that I'd say been a very important part of my life in this year. I'd say that I had much more depression last year, when there've been much more, we didn't feel that much stress, we didn't feel that much, big events happening than this year. But this year we were all so into doing something, so into acting, so into interacting, even though we were staying at home. But basically, I'd say that this is my very important learning point. And
certainly, we will be saying goodbye to this year, very, very tough one, in less than 2 months. Yep. Hopefully, goodbye forever to 2020. But it has definitely taught us a lot, and just listening to your transformations, listening to your lessons of the year, it certainly gave us a lot of food for thought, and I think everyone will be reflecting on the changes, the new skills, and you said soft skills are important. And as a manager, as somebody who's managing a business school, it's certainly important to talk about these skills, because it's interesting. I study all things cross-cultural, and for me, it's interesting to look at change and different processes, how they shape up in different countries and different cultures. Russians are noted to be good on hard skills, and in many articles about business skills of Russian managers. But soft skills need to be developed. It's something that needs to be looked at in business schools, because not so long ago, a couple of years ago, there was a study conducted by a Russian company about some Russian managers. Why is it that Russian managers did not get to the top positions in global companies? And one of the answers, one of the reasons, was their soft skills. So the research showed that the hard skills are very good. Some of the Russian top managers receive top class education. They go to top business schools in Russia and abroad, but nonetheless, they cannot compete with their foreign counterparts, with their international counterparts when it comes to soft skills, cross-cultural communication. So maybe the period, the stage that we are going through now will teach us something, will teach us the necessary soft skills that would bring us to the same category of a developed manager, developed top manager of an international company, of a global company. And as you said earlier, it will help to shape a global mindset. I think it's very, very important. And especially for Maria, who is studying right now, and basically like a sponge, she has to, and her peers, her classmates will have to take these trends on board, and will have to learn as we go. Because, once the stage is over, it's important for us to take the lessons, not to forget them until the next crisis hits, but to change, to transform, and be flexible. I think it's very, very important. Do you agree, Maria?
Yes, I obviously do agree that flexibility is the most important thing right now, because you never know what is going to be next. And maybe, yes, I will say that soft skills are very important nowadays, because theory and praxis go hand by hand. So yes, I guess that Russian managers should also dive deeper in this domain. Yes.
Yes, so that is important, and something that should be treated very, very seriously. Well, we are getting closer to the end of our conversation. Nonetheless, before we all go and we say goodbye to the people that watched us today, I just want to talk about our new skills. I want to talk about the skills and competences that you Dmitry, and you, Maria, consider valuable and useful in the current business reality? What are the skills, apart from flexibility that we touched upon today, what else will make us resilient and competitive? Dmitry, what do you think?
Yeah, well, if we separate that again, I'm all about separating and classifying. This is the kind of academic background we usually have to find a place for a concept and to understand what to do with it. So we have hard skills that are definitely necessary, needed for any manager who wants to succeed in doing business in 2020 and beyond in the digital era. These are the skills of managing data, of working with computer systems, with computer infrastructure. And this basically became the skill that is, expected from a manager who is coming for any kind of, specific focused pathway. So we have to do that. We need that. And we need an understanding that is essential for introducing AI solutions, so how to work with machine learning in many parts of economy. So this skills, so working with the data and skills necessary to operate with the data, the knowing of the system and infrastructure of digital part of doing business. This is important. But at the same time, in terms of the soft skills, we would have things like managing transformation, managing changes in the company, together with preparing the people for this change. Another would be things like managing culture and talent for the fact that we're all living on distant platform using things like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and this is becoming the basis of the business. Many companies have liked it so much, have adopted so much that they are not coming back to the fact that they need an office, they need to maintain the same kind of interaction within the walls of an office, because now we became really in many ways free. So how to work with that, how to operate efficiently with that, this is important. Then I add a couple of important complicated also soft skills that are needed from the professional of today. So that would be imagination, because basically a lot of companies are competing for innovative ideas and imaginative ideas. The resilience inside of you, so being ready to accept the change in your own personal career, in the necessity to reinvent the value, to go beyond there. Then and actually the same goes for businesses, the skill for building networks. So just like, for example, what Maria mentioned today. So today, the master students, the bachelor students, so kids that I referred to, and these are K-12 kids, so the kids who are still in their school, they're learning how to network with people who they never saw in physical domain. So that just interacting with them, and how to build, things like trust, interaction with this kind of stuff, how to build ecosystems around you, both for business and for personal skills. Then the speed of education, so how quickly you're ready to accept the necessity to learn something new. For example, like the story of launching a product really fast. In many ways, for many managers, it will be really hard to be okay with launching something that is not finished, that is not working to 100% controlled environment, that is not having the systems that are in place. But today the world is demanding that we do something quick, do something fast, that we learn, that we iterate, and be okay with that. This is a very specific kind of part of the
yes, well, and be okay with it. Yeah.
Yes. The last one is being human. I think this is important. So this is critical. Yeah. Being human.
It's absolutely, just absolutely so, absolutely true, and very wise things there. Be okay with these changes. Yeah, be human. And you mentioned something that I want to, spend some time on. You said building trust with the people that you have never met. Yeah, because we communicate in the online format. We did not have a chance to meet our new partners, potential partners in person. But nonetheless, what's really amazing about this online reality is that I think people are beginning to trust each other more because they want to establish this connection. They want their ties to be strong, and they want to do something meaningful and to get something meaningful out of this online interaction, because maybe some of them know and feel that these changes are here to stay on the one hand, and also there's uncertainty. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. So our planning horizon is now limited to a very, very short period of time. Before, people would ask, so where do you see yourself in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? It was easy to plan that. Today, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah, what challenges and changes will be thrown our way. So we have to be flexible, and being human, being open-minded, being caring certainly are the skills that come to the foreground. These are the skills that will help us to stay afloat. So very interesting. Lots of things to think about, lots of food for thought here. And I would like to thank you and Maria for this discussion, our audience who have been with us. We will continue our conversations next week. We will meet on Thursday, on the 26th of November, for the final in the series of webinars. So do stay with us for that one if you can. Prepare your questions, check out the subject of our conversation, and do join us from wherever you are. We appreciate our audiences, and we'd like to hear the questions from our audiences. Next time, we'll be talking about well-being in times when everything goes not as it was planned. And some of the things do happen even during these webinars the way they were not planned, but we are flexible and we adjust to a new reality, to new things as much as we can. I'd like to thank very much Dmitry and Maria for their thoughts, for this interesting conversation. I think a lot of people have been with us today, left with something to think about, definitely something to reflect upon. Today, we talked about strategies of business development in digital economy, and we shared this topic with Dmitry Knatko, who is Deputy Dean of the Graduate School of Business, and Maria Yelagina, who is a master's student in International Management Program. Thank you very much, Dmitry. Thank you very much, Maria. And thank you, dear audience, members of the audience who have been with us from different parts of the world.
Take good care. Take good care. Stay healthy. Take good care.
Take care.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye-bye.